should we move into PS5 thoughts at this point?
Yeah. I mean, Gonna
wrap up with that.
It sure is white.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, right off the bat, dude, I mean, I'll be the first to admit it, as much as the memes were getting kind of obnoxious, it makes sense because it really does look like a router it looks like a really high-end router that you would see in like a server room, like off in a corner somewhere. And that's not such a bad thing. Personally, I like the way it looks. I don't know if I really have mixed feelings. I feel like I'd be pretty comfortable having that thing in my house. I like how there is a digital version with no disk drive, but there was a dilemma for me after getting excited about it because I thought, well, to be fair, I do actually watch the occasional Blu-ray, and if I do have a reason to get rid of my PS3 and PS4, then I'm out of a Blu-ray player if I buy the digital version.
Isn't that going to be like a 4K Blu-ray player too, or something like that?
Yes, which it ought to be. So I'm glad that that's there, because at some point I probably will upgrade to a 4K television and potentially 4K Blu-rays. It's hard to say. Right. My thought, I mean, that's a different tangent that I don't want to go down, but
I think it's a valid one. Like that's something that I hadn't considered. The
4K player.
Yeah, and like I don't really watch a ton of Blu-rays anymore, but I think that's a valid reason to buy, the disc version of the system.
Yeah, because here's the thing. I'm a digital guy now, as most people know. I buy all of my games digitally. It's the way I prefer it now because I just find it to be easier. But there's value in physical. We definitely know that. But when I thought about that digital version, I said to myself, okay, well, I definitely watch Blu-ray, so I caught that pretty quickly. But there's probably a lot of people that are not going to think about that. They're going to get the digital, and they're going to be like, oh, shit, I can't watch Interstellar on Blu-ray.
Yep.
Like, that's absolutely going to happen. There's no way that every single person is going to remember that, because people don't watch Blu-rays often. Some people do, but most people don't. They watch them occasionally. Right. And when that occasion comes up, there's going to be somebody that's going to be like, oh, shit, I should have thought about that. And they're going to either try and exchange it, return it, or they're just going to go out and buy like a $100 Blu-ray player. I don't even know how much they cost standalone because I just had never had a reason to buy a standalone one.
Right. They're about $100, yeah.
Yeah, I would imagine at this point. But yeah, then again, you can't even have the argument that there's 4K movies now that you can buy, because you still wouldn't be able to pop it into the goddamn drive because it's not there. So it'll sell well for the people that don't buy movies. It'll definitely sell well. And I don't buy Blu-rays anymore because there just haven't been many movies that I've been interested in buying. But
I mean, what is that new one with the Christopher Nolan movie that's coming out soon?
Oh yeah, that's a good example. Tenet. So if Tenet does well and I absolutely love it in the theater, I'm gonna buy that shit.
Right, and you're gonna buy it on Blu-ray.
And I'm gonna buy it on Blu-ray and then I won't be able to play it if I have that digital copy. So yes, there's many arguments to be had. I could keep the PS3, I could keep the PS4, sure. But I think ultimately my decision is gonna be with the disc drive. I'd rather just have it, because again, if there's a physical copy of some collector's edition of Sekiro Part 2 or some shit, I want to be able to pop that in the goddamn console.
Right. I mean, I think the only reason why anybody would go strictly digital over the disc version is if like the amount of storage space is vastly greater.
Yes.
Like if they're giving you 1 terabyte on the disc version and 2 or 3 terabytes on the discless. But even then, like, again, this kind of boils down to, what they're sharing with us. But if you can add storage to the PlayStation on your own, like you can with the PS3 and the PS4, it may be worth it to, go with the disc version anyway, because, storage is cheap.
Yep.
But then they have their hybrid thing, and it's like there's so many questions,
Yeah. I think that's kind of ultimately where we're at. There's more questions that have been unanswered.
Yeah.
And we don't have price points, and there could be a big gap in between price points between the two. I doubt it, but there could be. We really just don't know.
If I had a guess, I'd say, $70.
Oh, that low?
No more than 100.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, I suppose you're right. But, imagine if they did pull that wild card and they put like a massive hard drive in the digital and they charged like 150 more for it or something.
I think the disc version would be more.
Oh, but just because of the hardware.
Yeah.
Sure.
I think you're unless there's a vastly different hard drive, then which case, who knows? Because you got to weigh in the pros and cons of having the disc in there, the disc drive, how much that costs, what are you offsetting with it,
Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, like going back to the physicality of this thing, in fairness, like what did you really expect? Another version of the Pro that just looks a little bit sleeker? Because I think there's a wide audience that would have appreciated just something a little bit more simplistic. But and I thought about that myself. I was like, man, I kind of missed like the whole sexy sleek black thing that they had going on for a while. But who's to say that they won't make this in black? Number one.
Oh, they will.
And number two, it is kind of nice to see something a little bit different for once, because I don't think we've really seen a console that looks really striking for quite some time. And does it really matter? No, because I mean, over the past, 5-10 years, they've been starting to look like just PCs in a box, essentially, with a couple cool lights.
Well, I mean, the Xbox Series X is a prime example of that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I suppose it is. It's not exactly the most thrilling of systems, but it is kind of cool that it looks like, basically looks like a speaker, really. Like
it does, yeah.
I think we can move the fridge jokes aside at this point. But, I like the looks of the PS5. It's looking pretty cool. The controller I'm definitely excited about. I think a lot of people are excited for that for a number of reasons. You got the haptic feedback, and you've got the microphone that apparently is built into the controller. Who knows how that's going to work, but that's kind of interesting. They're going to implement the speaker more, hopefully. And just looks a little bit bigger too, because I know a lot of people have complained about the DualShock over the years, about it being a little bit small, and the thumbsticks are a common complaint with them being, horizontal from each other.
Did they change the thumbsticks on the new one?
No, I think they're still in the same spot. Yeah. But a lot of people seem a little less concerned with that because the controller itself is a little bit beefier.
Gotcha.
Which is helpful, because I did like the 360 controller. That is an excellent controller in its own right. So it's nice to see a little bit of a change there from the traditional DualShock. And the lineup seemed cool. You got the nice little matching headset, camera, and remote. The remote actually might be worth getting. Small. You can see there's a lot of minimalism that's being used with this kind of stuff now. And that's all I got, man. I'm excited for it. I want to see more games. That kind of ties in with how I felt about the game shows. So I guess at this point I'm just kind of hunkering down, enjoying what I have right now, and just hoping for a little bit more content.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of in the same boat as you. I enjoyed the memes. I got a good laugh out of those. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
The console certainly is striking. I'm not opposed to the look of it, but I think I like it. If it were not a PS5, like if that were some other contraption in my living room, I think I'd be more on board with it. Mm-hmm. My concern isn't so much the system as it is the controller. Those controllers, when they're white, they show every bit of dirt and grime and dust and all that controller cheese or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, it's like hand crud.
It's going to show up in there, and anybody that had a 360 is very familiar with that.
Oh yeah.
Anybody that had a Wii is very familiar with that. White consoles are good looking until they're not, and it doesn't take long for them to start showing their age. Black hides dirt and just fading much better. And
Absolutely.
even if you're dusting it every day and bleaching it every day and taking good care of it, just over time that white is going to turn colors. You know.
Yeah, no, it will.
It's just-
I actually had a spring white Xbox 360 controller. I actually still have an unboxing and a small review on my YouTube.
Oh, nice.
With no tattoos on my arms, and my arms just look like so feeble and and so white and pale as I'm reviewing this thing. But yeah, besides the point, the controller itself was stark white, and it was really cool. But yes, I had a lot of hand crud buildup, and it doesn't matter how much you wash your hands, it just happens with hand sweat, movement, and just general skin contact. And I used to take an old this is actually a very good little tool that you can use here for cleaning controllers. Take an old toothbrush, make sure it's dry, and they work perfectly to get out all that stuff out of the crevices of the controller. Like, I'm not talking about in between the buttons, I'm talking about like where the controller is, like the seams on the sides, like all the way around. That's where a lot of that stuff will build up. You take that toothbrush, gets it right out of there.
If you dunk that same toothbrush in some 90% isopropyl alcohol and scrub the shit out of it, it'll work wonders as well too.
Sure.
You want to use the 90% because it has less water content in it. It will evaporate quicker.
Yes, 100% agree. Vinegar is good too, white vinegar, but you want to dilute that heavily, because otherwise you will have a controller that stinks. Like, it'll stink like pickles, dude. It's like you just dropped it in a jar of Vlasic. And then you pulled it out, and you're like, all right, I'm ready to game.
Nobody wants pickle controllers.
Yeah. So yeah, man. You know, I'm optimistic. I'm hopeful, and I'm optimistic about a lot of these things, and we'll see what happens.